Back here, 615 Sessions Podcast. It is been a minute since we've had our buddy John Reed on from Fan Run Radio in Knoxville. You can hear him talk sports noon to 3 Eastern time. You can also catch him on the Reed's Ranch Podcast. Subscribe, rate, review, wherever it is that you get your podcast. He is here because there is much going on Rocky Top. Certainly not just in the last 24 hours. I mean, you look really, really good for having just 10 straight days of Vols content shoved into your neck, Reed, but it's good to see you, bud.
Hey, I appreciate you. Flattery will always make me feel good. Yeah, it's been nonstop news, but I guess I'm a seasoned pro. Being in Knoxville for the last 5 or 6 years, I guess you learned that this is just the normal, but I appreciate you having me. Love talking to you. Excited to see where we go.
Yeah, we were getting into the content side of things before I actually started rolling. So I said, hell, let's just go and talk about that. And we'll save some Titan stuff for the back end. But obviously, Josh Heupel is now the hype man on Rocky Top. He is the 27th head coach of your Tennessee Volunteers. And there are understandably mixed emotions, or maybe is it not understandable, Reed? I don't know where you stand on this particular hire. So why don't you kind of give the people your perspective on how things have gone down since Phil Fulmer and Jeremy Pruitt were fired, Danny White was hired, and then he just turned around and hired the guy that he hired 3 years ago at UCF.
Yeah, see, the timeline's important. I mean, even going back before Fulmer's fired, we had been waiting for, 6 or 7 weeks to see, okay, is Pruitt just going to get fired off of the team's performance, because Tennessee was awful this year. They lost 7 games by double figures. They would have had a 7-game losing streak had they not gotten to play Vanderbilt, with COVID depleted Vanderbilt. They still almost, struggled in that game, at least in the first half. But, so 6 weeks ago, we're waiting, like, is Pruitt just going to get canned after Texas A&M? And then you get the allegations and, the NCAA trouble. And we're like, okay, well, now Pruitt's definitely out of there. But we kept waiting. Like, look, nothing's going to happen on Christmas. No, we'll wait for Christmas. Everyone's on holiday. You don't fire men on Christmas. Then it was, okay, New Year's. No, you don't fire men on New Year's. You got some things going on. Add in as, he had a death in the family. So we're weighing out some things. We're waiting. And, okay, the contract will go down a little bit if you wait a couple more weeks to fire him. And then finally the news breaks that not only is Jeremy Pruitt out, but also Philip Fulmer is, quote unquote, forced into retirement, despite still getting his full buyout. They acted like he wasn't fired, but he was fired.
I love that.
Yeah. So at that point, we had been riding a wave of emotions, because whenever you're thinking about what's going to happen with Pruitt, some names are starting to get thrown around. Are we going to just hire Doug Marrone? Philip Fulmer loves Doug Marrone. Are we going to try to promote Kevin Steele? There was the weird timing where Fulmer hires Kevin Steele to come be on the defensive staff, and everyone just kind of was like, wait a second, does that mean Pruitt's safe because you're hiring assistant coaches? And everyone's like, well, Kevin Steele might be on for the next guy, or maybe he's the interim head coach. So everyone's freaking out about that, which I don't know if you saw the news today, Buck, but they just gave Kevin Steele $900,000 for 1 month of work as they fired him and bought him out of his 2-year guaranteed contract. So
I did not love to see it.
Yep. It's good work. $900,000 for 1 month of work. Hopefully now he can invest it in like AMC or something and really hit a lick. But,
I got some GameStop stock I'd like to sell him.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And, so when Philip Fulmer finally gets forced into retirement, you're starting to think, okay, now what's going to happen? And the thought process and the hot board for the AD coaching, the AD search was pretty bleak. It was like, hey, are we going to go with another Tennessee guy? Are we going to go with somebody from a small school? You're looking at like John Gilbert at ECU, or, the UAB's athletic director. Then all of a sudden it comes out of nowhere. You get Danny White, who by all accounts is a top level athletic director. You poach him from UCF. You give him big money. It's reported that your president of the university, Randy Boyd, paid the buyout out of his own pocket, because one of the president of Tennessee is one of our mega boosters. Yeah. So he just ponied up $2 million and said, you know what? I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to hire a top level AD. So once that happened, Buck, and I know I'm taking a really long way to get to this answer, but
this is very important.
I think the timeline's important. So once Danny White is hired, I think expectations raised, because he's a top 5 AD and he's someone who has been a winner, wants to be a winner, looks like a winner, and, you have confidence in him. And then, the coaching search happens and some names sort of kind of get leaked out, but it's close to the vest. And, at one point people are saying Sonny Dykes or Tony Elliott, and you're like, I don't really want that. And it's like, okay, what about Matt Campbell? And everyone's like, yeah, Matt Campbell. That sounds great.
Love that.
Yeah, he makes $3.7 million. Let's give him $8 million and make him say no. And then he says no. Maybe. We don't know. Well, we don't know if we actually offered him, because according to Danny White, he only offered one person the job, which, okay, Danny, I wouldn't say that if I were you. And then
they got their guy, Reed. There was their top target the whole time. That's how it goes.
I don't think I would say that after you pay, $1 million to a search firm or whatever it was to go out and hire the guy you had at your last job. But either way, then it goes to James Franklin, and people are like, okay, yeah, James Franklin. Yeah, he was kind of a jerk at Vanderbilt, but he won at Vanderbilt. And okay, there's some, the Vanderbilt rape stuff. He's tied there. Will we look like hypocrites because of the Schiano stuff? And it's like, well, I don't know. Penn State hired him, but does that really absolve him from any blame? I don't know. There was the hazing stuff that happened at Penn State this year where he says, don't talk to cops. Can we say that? Can we hire him? And, you flirt there and you end up not getting him. And as you're still waiting for James Franklin, they sneak in Josh Heupel. And, my response to that hire, Buck, is just, okay, I guess. Okay. I mean, I don't have it in me to be angry about it anymore. And there's no sense in getting angry about it. I mean, he's a head coach. He's won some games. I have a couple of questions, though. I'm like, you aren't following Scott Frost in a quote unquote national championship season. You are coming into a program that is in shambles, and you couldn't recruit at UCF coming off of all the national attention you had, coming off of being in the state of Florida and being the premier program of the AAC. You are coming into Tennessee, who needs talent and needs to be revamped. And the two things I wonder about whether or not you're able to do, those are the two things on your resume that just say you can't do them, or at least you haven't yet.
I love you for your recall on all of that, because it's just been so ongoing that I take for granted that every wrinkle of this story people just automatically know. But it's nice to have a refresher course from time to time, because Tennessee is so often a shit show. You just sometimes, even when they're not a shit show, because this was done probably as professionally as any Tennessee coaching search as I can remember in quite some time, no matter what Danny White thinks of people leaking the night before he makes the hire, or Vols Twitter and the hate that he thinks needs to be dissuaded there, which is never going to happen, Danny. Know your audience.
If he wins, it'll happen. I mean, if he wins, it'll happen. And also, like, you go back, and Tennessee hiring Danny White was the first thing we've been universally praised for since, giving Pat Summitt a statue. Like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't happen with Tennessee. It's always something. Even when you hired Rick Barnes, you had people saying, and I was one of them, like, hey, retirement Rick, he's coming there to get a golden parachute. Like, the fire's out. I'd rather have an up and comer. And, he's been good. He's been solid at Tennessee, but there were naysayers to that. So like I said, I don't know when the last time Tennessee was universally praised. And when you hired Danny White, I called it a statement hire on our show. I was like, hey, this is a big time statement. Tennessee is showing maybe it's finally time to get serious. And then, you come out with you come out with Josh Heupel, excuse me. And it's just another meh hire, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just maybe means that Tennessee's a 6, and we need to realize we can't go after 10s. We got to stay in our lane because we're a 6.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know what the expectation for people who are thinking that there could have been more out there. It's not. It is an attractive job when things are going right, but we still don't know what the implications of Jeremy Pruitt's recruiting violations are going to be, according to the NCAA. I'm sure the university had to make these prospective coaching hires before deciding on Josh Heupel, or not even deciding on Josh Heupel, but kind of being left with Josh Heupel. Had to make these coaches aware of, hey, X, Y, and Z, we feel maybe coming down the pipe with this situation that Jeremy Pruitt has kind of left us with. And no matter how many times, I don't know what you make of the McDonald's bag story. I haven't had a chance to listen to your thoughts, but whether that was drummed up to get Jeremy Pruitt out of there for cause and save some money on the buyout, as people have alleged, I don't really know. All I look at this and think is there are attractive qualities to Josh Heupel at any other program, maybe not in the SEC, but not really any other program outside of top tier SEC football, right? Brand name SEC football. Josh Heupel is probably regarded as one, maybe not young, but up and coming coaches who have promise. Their offense delivers. The recruiting needs improvement. The defense is obviously something that is a concern. And you don't know whether he was winning with Scott Frost's team when they went 12-1 the year after Frost left for Nebraska. These are all fair questions by anybody who's looking closely enough at the situation. But I just cannot comprehend what people expected to happen with any of this when you go and approach candidates like Tony Elliott, Matt Campbell's an entirely different thing. I don't think he's leaving for anything less than Notre Dame or Ohio State at this point, and every sign that he's given off kind of indicates that.
I'll add the Pittsburgh Steelers in there too. I'm gonna go ahead and call my shot in a couple of years. If Tomlin gets fired, he might want to go back to Pittsburgh. That's what I think. I think he's going to up at the Steelers. Ooh, you heard it here first.
That would be spicy. I will take that in consideration. Just gotta.
You heard it here first.
You gotta fit the hot take in there. You gotta fit the hot take. I appreciate you for it, brother. But anyway, long story short, the perception of Tennessee fans or by Tennessee fans of their program as a 10, a 9, or maybe even an 8 is just not factually accurate or any kind of realistic at this particular state. Now, what I do not agree with is things like what Paul Feinbaum is saying about Tennessee just not being relevant anymore, and this was the best they could do. I don't think that's the case at all. Being somebody who was a fan of a historically great basketball program that is no longer irrelevant in my Indiana Hoosiers and feeling very much the same way about Archie Miller when he was hired, just kind of I understand the statement, but I think that there is middle ground to be found there, John.
Well, what I would say is, I called us a 6, and I think it's time we admit that. But, Buck, how many 6s with millions of dollars do you see walking around with 10s?
Plenty.
Well, that was the hope. Like you had the rumors that you could spend up to $8 million a year on a coach. And, I was thinking we were in the perfect scenario in terms of, the SEC money is about to get even stupider in a couple of years when the ESPN deal officially starts getting paid. And I believe it's 2023. You get an extra $17 million a year. Coaches are going to be regularly making $8 million a year in that league. Like Nick Saban, if he's still around, will be making $15 million a year because the money will be there and he's worth it. So I was hoping that you could take enough money and make a good hire simply just by throwing stupid amounts of cash right now. Because if you hire Matt Campbell and you pay him $9 million, are you overpaying right now? Sure. Maybe he's not the third best coach in the country, but in 3 years, everyone's going to be paying that. It's like the quarterback market in the NFL. It's like contracts in the NBA. Like it's all about when you hit the market and when you have the money and what that deal is going to look like in the future. So I will say, yes, we are a 6, but I thought we were a 6 with a lot of money. And we know those people can land some 10s. So that's what I was hoping. But, the thing is, I don't think anyone's actually angry about Josh Heupel. So I don't want that to be the thought process, or I don't want that to be the representation of Tennessee, because I don't think anyone's mad about it. It's just that there aren't many people excited about it.
Which is a much better characterization, right? And you'll always have the loud minority who are going to bitch about whatever happens, no matter what happens. But it's not to the level of apathy yet. I think people are always going to be invested in the University of Tennessee. It's one of the most amazing things in sports, the passion of this fan base, no matter how many times they are burned. But I think that is that the worst thing though, Reed, for people to just kind of be in that place to where they can be pleasantly surprised and not set unrealistic expectations. Like I understand why people like Philip Fulmer, when he went up there and said before the season, I think it was after my Indiana Hoosiers were bested in the Gator Bowl at a booster luncheon or whatever, when he says the Vols are back and pretty soon we're going to get a piece of everybody's ass. Yeah. Like, I know you need those people who believe in what Tennessee is and used to be and what it can be again to kind of keep people invested. You don't want people that just give up. But I do think that there can be some good found in just kind of resetting with this university and where the football program is at for the sake of the fan base, just to keep them from having so much angst on a regular basis. Or maybe that's a lost cause because they're going to feel that way when they lose to Kentucky on any given Saturday.
Well, that soundbite was just one of the many missteps from Philip Fulmer. I wish we could hire him again just so we could fire him one more time, because he's the person I think most responsible for running this program into the ground over the last 13 years. But look, on Tuesday night, full disclosure, I do a post-game basketball show. Tennessee squeaks out an ugly one against Mississippi State, and really all anybody wanted to talk about was the Heupel news. And people were mad that night. People were angry. One of our callers said they're going to set themselves on fire like the monk that was protesting the Vietnam War in Tibet and all that. So people were mad that night. But here we are on Thursday, and I've already seen the natural progression from fans. I've seen it over the last decade, Buck. It went from, Lane Kiffin, at least he's not old. He's innovative. He's young. Will be exciting. And then, he leaves in 1 year. And then it turned into, Derek Dooley's a Southerner. He understands his fan base. He'll figure it out. He knows the SEC. He's an SEC lifer. He was raised in the SEC. And then it turned into Butch Jones is a real coach. He has winning records. He knows what it takes to build a program, and he's not going to say the stupid things that Derek Dooley said, the orange dog, the shower discipline, making World War references. Butch Jones won't embarrass you. He won't say stupid things, which, by the way, that was a big mistake because Butch Jones did say a bunch of stupid things. And then we get to Pruitt. It turns into, oh, at least he's not a band nerd. I'm sure you've seen the picture of Butch Jones as a band geek. Oh, Jeremy Pruitt's a real football man. We got a ball coach now. This guy loves ball. He's on the band. He knows what it takes to win the SEC. He knows what it's like to recruit. He's from Alabama. He knows what this university means. And now we're like, Josh Heupel, well, at least he knows what asparagus is.
By the way, I miss Butch Jones more than any figure in my sports media life. I really do.
Not me.
Well, I understand why, brother, but my God, was he good for a soundbite. And I'm honestly fascinated to see what Jeremy Pruitt looks like in Manhattan with the Jets, because that is going to be a comedy of errors, I can only imagine. But yes, this is the what I forget how many steps of denial there are, or how many phases of,
I believe 5, and we're in the bargaining stage right now, I think, where we're just saying, well, at least it's better than the last situation, or maybe that's the acceptance stage. I don't know. It's been a long time since school.
Yeah. The bargaining is the best way to put it. And I think I've done a little bit of it myself, just as, I'm looking to kind of move away from Heupel. I'm looking at Danny White, and universally, the University of Tennessee was praised for that hire. He is considered to be a top candidate for any top athletic director position in the country around college football. And I found myself doing a little bit of this as the week progressed and as the coaching search progressed. And I'm like, at least he's not Philip Fulmer, because everything that Phil did was messy. At least Danny White seems to have a coherent and concise plan, no matter how this thing ends up playing out. And yes, the optics are not great of you hiring the same guy that you hired 3 years ago for lack of better options, I would imagine, even if you're not willing to admit it. But I think just kind of taking the steps to get away from being a national embarrassment like the last time around with this stuff, I really do think there's value in that.
Oh, 100%. And Philip Fulmer, again, he was awful as an AD. Like I said, he is the man most responsible for running this program into the ground. I wonder what Danny thought when he took the job, though, Buck, because I kind of feel like he thinks, okay, this is a program with money. This is a program, with history, a good fan base, and I'm Danny White. I'm going to go up there and I'm going to get a star. I know how to find coaches. People will want to come work for me. I'm Dr. Danny. I'm going up there and I'm going to fix this program because I'm a winner and that's what I do. And then I got all this money and people are still telling me no. Turns out people don't want to work for me as much as I thought. I wonder if he comes out of this a little humble from it and realizes like, this might be a little bit tougher to fix than I thought. And, you mentioned he brought in the guy he was with and all that. I'll give Danny the benefit of the doubt that he knows what he's doing because he's earned it. Now, he hasn't won in the Power 5, and, you're always going to question that until it happens. Like, winning at Buffalo and winning at UCF is different than winning at Tennessee and the SEC, of course. But the biggest hope for me is that he is smart enough to know that, maybe this is going to take a 2 or 3 year cleansing and we'll reevaluate in 3 years. And if Josh Heupel hasn't done a good enough job and he hasn't taken us to the next level, I have no issue with firing him if he's still a 7 or 8 win coach. And then now I'll be equipped. We'll be out of NCAA trouble and I'll be equipped with more money, thanks to the ESPN deal, and a kind of restored brand. And I'll go out and get somebody to actually take Tennessee to the next level. I hope Danny is viewing it as a 5 or 6 year plan and doesn't get married to Heupel, because that's been our biggest problem, is that too many of these ADs don't recognize that coaches are on different tiers. You have builders and you have elevators. You have coaches that can max out at 8 wins and, be good, but they're not going to be great. And then the problem in the cycle is we allow them to get to the point where it all runs out. Like, take Butch Jones, for example. If Butch Jones would have left after year 3, Butch Jones would be beloved in Tennessee. He got you back to 9-4. You had NFL talent all over the field. I mean, look, what's on Sundays? I mean, Justin Coleman is the highest paid nickelback, or at least he was last year. You have guys on NFL rosters all over the place. If Butch Jones would have left after year 3, he would have been praised at Tennessee. Year 4 comes. That's the year you should have won the SEC East. That's the year you choke away the game against South Carolina. You lose to Vanderbilt, and you don't even go to the Sugar Bowl like you should have. You go 8-4. It would have been tough to fire a coach after back-to-back 8-4 seasons, but this program would be in much better shape had you made the tough decision. While this thing is somewhat above water, while we have a good foundation, I'm going to make a tough decision and I'm going to find a new coach. Instead, you don't. And everyone knows that Butch Jones is a dead man walking. He's a lame duck coach. That's the offseason where he couldn't quit saying stupid stuff. I mean, he just keeps saying 5-star hearts and life champions, and his recruiting had tanked. And you allowed that to happen, and guess what happened the next year? You won 4 games. You went 4-8. You completely tanked your roster. You completely tanked recruiting. And then you ended up with Jeremy Pruitt after a long coaching search because fans were so fed up. Fans were so mad. You felt so close to success after the back-to-back 8-4 seasons. You knew it could be better. Tennessee could get back to the point where you're winning the East. But instead, you win 4 games. You lose 8. You go winless in the SEC. You hire another coach that wasn't ready for the Tennessee job. And look where we're at now. It's the same thing. It's kind of ironic because that's what was going to happen to Jeremy Pruitt had he not gotten in trouble. Like, he would have gotten fired in year 4 because the roster would be bad and he's not a good coach, and we'd have had 2 bad recruiting classes and it would have happened again. But we were able to fire him early. But the irony is, Buck, that, we had all these NCAA sanctions and all these transfers, and we found ourselves at rock bottom again, having to completely build over. So I'm hoping that Danny White realizes, hey, if Josh Heupel is still 7-5 or 8-4 in year 3, that's not good enough. I'm going to go hire a different coach before, this goes back down and then we have to start all over. I'm hoping Danny's smart enough for that.
It's a fascinating dynamic because I look at that, what you just described, a lot like I look at in the NFL, general managers and players who they drafted who are approaching free agency. Like, you just can't get that married to your guy when you know that you can find other prospects out there that may not be immediate improvements, but have better long-term trajectory or make more sense for your franchise or at that time, can help elevate you as long as you time things correctly. And so often, whether it be in college football, like you've just described with athletic directors and coaches, whether it be in the NFL with contracts that are given to players by general managers who drafted them because they believe in their process, and as a result, the players that they are paying. I look at that and say, Danny White's track record is solid for where he has been, but this is an entirely different ballgame as you've outlined. And I imagine he has to have been humbled. And if he hasn't been, then he's a whole different kind of ego monster than what has been described to me.
I'm not ruling that option out, by the way.
Oh, neither am I. Based on listening to a little bit of what Stephen Gottfried had to say, I am fully prepared for the Danny White experience to continue on and on and on.
Well, we also have never seen him have to fire his own coach, at least at football or basketball. I mean, I don't know if he had to fire a baseball coach or whatever. I don't think so. But, will he be able to admit he was wrong on Heupel? That's a concern. And, you made the NFL comparison. You talked about players, but, I mean, you're there in Nashville. You saw it. Amy Adams did it with when she brought in Vrabel, got rid of Malarkey after a playoff win, and was like, you know what? You're not the coach to take us to the next level. I know you won a playoff game, but let's face it, it was kind of fluky. Travis Kelce gets hurt. Mariota's catching passes to himself and running in. And, we won that game, and that's great, but I don't think you can sustain this. I don't think you're good enough. She made that tough call, and I think everyone would agree the franchise is in better position with Vrabel than it would be with Malarkey. So, yeah, I mean, we saw her do that over there in Nashville.
Unequivocally. Now it falls on the ego of Mike Vrabel, because you and I were discussing before we started rolling as to what he's going to do with his coaching staff, and we'll transition a little bit there, because I honestly haven't talked much Titans at all this week on any platform, because there's not been much going on. But I guess, Reed, people know your passion, especially those who follow you on social media, for the Tennessee Titans, and this was a, I know our buddy Chad Withrow would claim that this was a failure outright this season, despite winning the division for the first time in 12 years, hosting a home playoff game for the first time in 12 years. And yeah, you pooped yourself in the one and done playoff situation. The defense was bad all year, but now Mike Vrabel is in a similar position as one we're kind of following Danny White's progress with, or will follow Danny White's progress with over the next couple of years, as to how he goes about replacing Arthur Smith and what the hell he ends up doing with Shane Bowen. And I guess from your perspective, what would you have him do about the offense and the defense?
Oh, see, I'm not going to be able to answer those. I mean, the offensive coordinator, he's actually, hired a couple good ones before. I'll trust him there. Okay. The defensive coordinator obviously was a disaster this year. I mean, was Bowen the defensive coordinator? I mean, I know he says that was kind of what he did. Kevin Byard said, yeah, he was basically our coordinator. We didn't give him the title, but I mean, you can't just run that back again, right? I mean, if he was actually coordinating the defense, can you just bring that back? I feel like you really can't. Although, I don't know. Do you think the season was a success or a failure? Like, do you think you kind of glossed over that? How would you judge the season?
I would say that in what they stated their goal to be, which is to win enough games to win the division and host a home playoff game, they did succeed in that. What they failed at was getting back to the place or superseding the position that they put themselves in 2019, which is to go to the AFC Championship game and to ultimately try and compete for a Super Bowl. So if the goal, which the ultimate goal is always compete for a Super Bowl, yeah, you fell on your face because, one, you were either too stubborn to admit that your defense needed course correction, or that what really is hovering over all of this is that your GM really botched the personnel side of things this year in a way that was clear and obvious to everybody. You weren't going to win any kind of battles up front with Wyatt Ray, Tuzar Skipper, and Derek Roberson on third downs. It just wasn't humanly possible. So I understand people's fervor for a need for a new defensive play caller, whether you remove Bowen entirely or whether you hire a designated defensive coordinator. I just think that the personnel moves were such, and it failed in such a spectacular way, that I really don't think anybody could have predicted that you have to grade on a curve for Shane Bowen. And also, I think it would be Mike Vrabel's preference to bring him back, because it's not just about who can you get that's a better defensive coordinator. It's who is Mike comfortable with running his system. And he very, very much trusts Shane Bowen to run his system, so much so that after the Cincinnati loss, Reed, he's telling us they're on that Zoom call very, very defiantly, well, I know it's not a problem with the coaching because I'm there to oversee it every day. And he's running my defense the way that I think it should be run. This is obviously now paraphrasing. This wasn't quite as defiant, although he might as well said all of this. Essentially what he's saying to us is, no, everything's fine because I know that it's fine, when it's clearly and obvious not fine. It's the kind of fine that's the dog meme drinking the cup of coffee and the room is aflame. Like, this is the kind of fine that we find ourselves in.
Maybe it was just like, hey, get rid of Jonathan Joseph, and that'll eliminate a lot of our problems. And I do feel bad for the defense, just simply because, I mean, Adoree, went through his injury, and Fulton couldn't really get on the field, and you did have to play Jonathan Joseph, and that's how it was kind of hard to be too mad about it. I know as more of a fan, I was just kind of waiting, like, if Adoree gets back, the second year will get better and it'll be okay. And I do think the defense played better towards the end of the year, but yeah, I mean, it was whiff after whiff in terms of, their plan, at least like from the GM stage, like you said. I mean, everyone knew that Vic Beasley was a bad mistake. Like no one thought that guy.
Nobody thought that was a good idea. Nobody.
Yeah, no one thought giving him $8 million was a good idea. I still think Clowney, was good enough. A 1-year deal obviously gives him incentive to shut down early and worry about free agency this year, and protect his money. But what can you do? I was curious how you thought about the season as a success or failure. I mean, my thing to bring it full circle was I kind of just judged the season as meh. You won the division, first time you'd done it in, over a decade, but you failed in the playoffs. So I wouldn't call it a success. I wouldn't call it a failure. It was fun enough, I guess.
Fun enough.
Fun enough.
No, it's total. Listen, there's a lot of meth. There's a lot of just kind of we're just kind of here, in both phases of football in the state of Tennessee.
Well, I was going to say there's some overlap there because obviously the 2020 Titans was heavy offense and not a lot of defense, and that might be where Vol fans are headed, for the next couple of years with Josh Heupel. So buckle up.
It's a fun listen to me. Every Vol fan that's listening to this, it'll be a fun regular season ride. You'll enjoy watching it until it poops itself in the opening round of whatever the case may be, if you're playing for the SEC East or not. And it's, you're used to it scoring 30 and then somebody figures it out when it matters and it scores 13. That's not
the good news. We might be facing bowl bans, so we don't have to worry about postseason.
Oh, what we will not have to worry about is every time our friend John Reed comes on that we will have entertaining content about the Vols, the Titans, and everything in between. Of course, you can hear him on Fan Run Radio down there in Knoxville, but you know this, noon to 3 Eastern time down there on Rocky Top. He's got the Reed's Ranch podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and a hell of a social media follow, if I do say so myself. Now, there's 2 underscores in it. I want to make sure you get the Twitter handle right for the people. I didn't forget, Reed.
He's learned. Buck has learned. Growth. We love to see it. We need to do a home and home. I need to get you on my radio show soon. I'll have you come on and talk some Titans with us.
Buddy, I'll be around and hopefully we'll have some news because I'm dying on, I'd rather not write about Derrick Henry's national media press tour today in his campaign to win FedEx Ground Player of the Year. There's got to be something else for me out there, Reed.
Yeah. No thanks on that one. Yeah, I'm good on those two. What about the Madden game? What about Derrick Henry and Madden over the weekend? You into that one or no?
I mean, what am I going to do with that? It's kind of like, because AJ Brown has the verses with Justin Jefferson that the NFL's doing. I kind of feel about those things the way that I felt for 20 minutes of my life yesterday when I downloaded Twitch. I just feel old.
Yeah. Wait, what is the verses? Are they going catch for catch? Like, is that what they're going to do? Like the rappers do hit for hit? Are they going to go catch for catch, highlight for highlight? How's that going to work?
After he IG lived his post-op surgery, I should probably be paying attention, more close attention than I was, but I just knew that he did it. I don't know what the hell happened on it. So that's a terrible job out of me.
I didn't like AJ saying, "Hey, I need more targets," though. I mean, do I want AJ to get more targets? Yeah, but I don't need him, publicly speaking on Jefferson only having better stats because of the targets.
No,
let's relax, AJ. We're at the tipping point. I got a lot of faith in you, AJ, but this is how it happens. Antonio Brown used to never say a word. Antonio Brown was never a locker room distraction until he was. You know what I mean? So let's pump the brakes on our diva wide receiver. Let's keep him the tough guy, the everyman, the hard worker.
From one AB to another, John Reed has just made an Antonio Brown comparison to AJ Brown. My God.
Well, I mean, am I wrong with that? I feel like Antonio Brown was the undrafted or the 6th round draft pick that was a hard worker that was, replacing Mike Wallace, who was a diva. And, Antonio Brown was the hard worker. And then all of a sudden, Juju gets there and he gets a little crazy. That's all I'm saying. It came out of nowhere with Antonio Brown for me.
Yeah, the difference is AJ knows he's the best Titans wide receiver in the history of Titans wide receivers, and there's probably not going to be another one that's anywhere close. Sure as hell not in the last 20 years.
Fair enough. Well, he's fair enough.
John Reed, check him out wherever you listen to your Tennessee Volunteers sports talk or otherwise down there on Fan Run Radio. Buddy, we appreciate the time as always. I know you got to be gassed, but we'll talk again soon.
I could do this all day, Buck. I appreciate you.
Back here, 615 Sessions Podcast. Look at him smile down there in Mobile, Alabama. It is the OG TD Turron Davenport reporting live from the Senior Bowl. What do you know, boss man?
Hey, what's going on, man? As I told you, this is heaven on earth for me. So
No question, no question. I just saw Jimmy Wyatt. He's lurking around the stands down there. You guys are scouting some prospect. Look at him. No legal pad. You got the mask on. You got the visor.
double pencils.
Oh yeah, double pencils. He's strapped up. Hi, Jim. It's perfect.
Everything is good on him except for that Dodgers hat. You know?
Listen,
as a Mets fan, you know what I mean? No.
Hey, you got your own problems right now as a Mets fan, all right? You got to stop. You can't have so many texts going out. The people keep receipts nowadays, Turron. You got to be careful out there in these streets.
Hey, listen, if there was one thing you could bring out of that, at least he was persistent. But, he was persistent for a bad cause.
Oh, goodness. Well, Turron is persistently and consistently reporting on all things going down there with the prospects that are working out at the Senior Bowl. Obviously, the Titans, John Robinson, Mike Vrabel, the contingent is down there scouting for the draft that will be held. I guess, Turron, we'll just go kind of general observations to start. Who stood out to you, and what positions are you hyper-focused on right now?
Yeah, I mean, some of the suspected guys have already stood out. I mean, I came down here knowing Tylan Wallace, the OK State receiver, was legit, and he's shown it. Dwayne Eskridge, a guy that, I've mentioned a few times from Western Michigan, and you don't have to say the Corey Davis experience has, made you not like Western Michigan receivers, because I know you're on top of that Corey Davis hill, but I'm climbing it. You know what I mean?
I'm a die here. He's going to get paid by the New York Jets, but I'm a die here, Turron.
Yeah, so those are two guys, but I've been focusing a lot on the defensive line and edge guys and interior guys. There's a guy named Levi Onwuzurike out of Washington that he didn't practice today, but he was dominant yesterday. The local kid, Robert Jones from MTSU, he had an awesome day today. I posted some videos of him. Patrick Jones, and that's one I was expecting to really stand out. There's a few guys, Keith Taylor Jr. out of Washington. So there's been a few guys. We're about to see the American team come out, and we'll see those guys on day 2. Carlos Basham, Marvin Wilson was really, really good D tackle. And I've seen him mock to the Titans a few times in the first round, but there's a good collection of guys here. I mean, I could go the whole show, talking about them, but there's a good collection.
And you can follow along with all Turron's updates. He's posting videos. He's got his personal scouting reports available at @Davenport_NFL. And I'm sure talking with TD, the podcast, subscribe, rate, review will be chock full of all kinds of draft nuggets. This is when my man eats. We know we got to go to TD this time of the year. So, Turron, I guess with where they're positioned right now, especially in the first round of 22, I mean, their needs are obvious in Tennessee. The biggest thing that everybody is talking about, whether it be through free agency or the draft, is a need for a pass rush, a need for whether it be from the edge, whether it be to help Jeffrey Simmons on the interior. They have to be able to generate pressure. As we sit here in the first round, we're far away and we don't know how the draft order is going to break, but do you think at 22 that they will be able to find an option for them to be able to help them in that way? Or do you think they would look elsewhere, like a wide receiver to supplant potentially Corey Davis? Or, I mean, we've seen John Robinson trade up. What do you think right now, based on the talent that you're seeing, will be available to them at that spot?
Honestly, I think Patrick Jones is an awesome option for them in the second round, to be honest with you. He'll be there in the first. It depends on how that board plays out, who else is available. But I think he's a perfect guy in that Harold Landry type of target zone, strike zone, right, to draft a guy in the second round. It would be good for Jones. That way it wouldn't be expected of him to come out the box with 10 sacks. But, his versatility matches really well. His motor matches well. I think that would be really good. Joseph Asai, the Texas kid, he's not here, but he's someone, he plays the jack position. So you'll see him, not dropping coverage as much. He'll be more involved with the run and obviously pass rush side of things, but he's kind of stiff. So I don't know if he's a guy in the first round. You got Azeez Ojulari. I apologize if I pronounce his last name wrong, but, from Georgia, he's a guy that I could see them using the pick on because he could come in right away. So there will be some options at 22, but I think, with this deep edge class, you could go into round 2 and still get somebody good. Rashad Reaver out of Pitt too.
Yeah, that's the thing that I've kind of been the more that I'm always late to the draft study, I feel like, but it's never been kind of my forte. Once the season ends, then I start to do my homework. And the more that I kind of evaluate, the depth and the talent level of the guys who are going to be available to them, the more that I kind of come away thinking, people freaked out, and Isaiah Wilson is a different matter entirely in the first round, but people kind of got all upset at them for drafting corner, waiting till the second round to draft a corner in Christian Fulton, who we'll see what the returns on that end up being. But I think people get so caught up in immediate need with that first round pick that they ignore how the draft strategy, how the strategy can better go to in the Titans' favor to better suit their needs. And there you see, if you're watching with us on YouTube, you can see the Senior Bowl down there in Mobile as TD's backdrop. This may be my favorite. This may be my favorite Zoom pod that we've done, Turron, just because, I mean, look at this. This is fantastic. It doesn't get much better. And you even got Wyatt.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. You get to
beautiful.
see everything. And, you'll see a guy in this practice. I'll post some videos of him, Carlos Basham. If he's available at 22, I forgot to mention him at Wake Forest. That could actually, you see him right there, just beyond. See the guy in the white walking.
Yes.
And he's just behind him to the right now. That's Carlos Basham.
Got it. Yeah. No, I think I'm really interested to get your final evaluations after this week concludes and see what you kind of come out with after you've had a more time to kind of evaluate and digest these what you've seen from these guys. But it's really exciting that we're getting back into this time of year, Turron. You know that you're our go-to guy around here when it comes to draft evaluation. You and our guy Emery. We got to bring up the football game plan squad from time to time. Yeah. You guys do an exceptional job. But we appreciate you checking in from the Senior Bowl, OG, and we'll catch up with you, I'm certain, down the road.
Oh, yeah, you already know it, man. When I got the text, I said, say no more. Say less, right? We'll be on. This is what we do.
Listen to me, Turron. If people could get me to say less, they would have done it a long, long time ago. But I physically can't do it, buddy.
Yeah, and before we go, you see this number 0 right here?
Yeah.
That little linebacker, he pictured Darren Bates, right? On after drinking 5 Red Bulls.
Stop it. There is nobody. Listen, Turron, I've gone back and watched a lot of television copy of the games, and I love how often the TV cameras go towards Darren Bates during Titans games because of how hype he is for people who make plays.
Look at him. Looks like Captain Caveman. But he's a player.
He's a player. He's a cartoon character. He's everything.
Look, he's still going.
Hey, he hadn't stopped. He's running right off the people's street. I can't with you, man. I love it. I'm happy that you're down there. You guys enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll check in with you for a final evaluation here on the 615 sessions.
All right, for sure, man. Appreciate it.